you know, you got to have it so it goes down so you don't go up, and it wouldn't run out. The tiles.
Oh, it's got to, yeah, gotcha. I know what you're saying. It goes, yeah. So how much time, how much does that cost? Like if you did this section of,
Yeah, I really don't know. I don't know what they're charging now. But I know it's expensive. This was many years ago now, when they were tiling over on, they were tiling for Erickson that used to own, they call it the Minkle place. It's right east of Yellow Church. There's a farm there. And
east of, gotcha, okay.
and they drained it into, they tiled it into our 40 there. And I didn't know at the time that it would make that much difference, but it kept raining practically all summer. It kept running water into ours down there. And a few years before that, I had it ditched out, and had it ditched so it would run out, go out toward the river. Well, they run that tile into ours, and then, and I don't know, it got to be a lot of grass and willows and stuff, and it didn't go out, so it just kept that water right there. So we really lost on that because I couldn't farm. There was one time when I had farmed that whole business there. Mike Starry is the one that ditched it out, and then he had a rototiller, big one behind a 806, I think it was, or 856, and he just tilled the whole thing. So I planted that next year. I planted corn on one side, and then on the east side, and then on the west side we put in Sudax. It's a kind of a coarse grass, and we got a crop. We got a crop off the whole thing. They had Urban William chop the Sudax, and we piled it out here, and it turned to silage. And the corn I picked with the picker. But that's the only year we got anything out of that. That low ground there. Because, well, for one thing, it started raining a lot, so it was pretty wet there. And then when Erickson tiled it, that his farm tiled it into ours there. And that was, we've had dry years, after that, but it always kept water coming in there.
Did he realize that? I mean, did he?
Well,
or did you talk to him about that at all ever?
I had to sign something, so I gave him permission, and I thought, well, what's the difference? It'll come underground or it'll come above ground. But see, when it comes above ground, it was a ditch there, so it kind of run off right away. But with the tile, it keeps coming. When there's water in the ground, it just keeps on coming all the time.
They fixed it last year, didn't they?
What?
They fixed it some last year, didn't they, so that it's...
Yeah, they see Mark owns it now.
Mm.
And
oh, it's that, okay.
They did some ditching out there, but it's still, that wouldn't, he'd have to tile that out. They wanted to tile that big slough out there. They wanted to tile that down to the river at the same time that Erickson had it tiled. And they wanted $9,000 to tile that down there. Well, at that time, $9,000 was a lot of money for us. So, that's what happened. It just, if I'd known what happened, I probably wouldn't have signed that thing. You know, because we lost money on that deal.
What year was that?
Oh, what year was that? It was when Erickson owned it. And that's many years ago.
So tiling's not not a new
No,
thing at all.
Phil Larson gets the benefit of it now. But I think he paid pretty good price for the land. But he can raise some pretty good crops over there because it's all tiled out. But like I told Wendell, I said, some of the beans out that were on, like on Crowell's, was tiled out there. And of course, when we got all that rain, the tile just couldn't take it, you know, so it drowned out a lot of beans out there. The same way out on the way to Alec, you know, that farm on the left-hand side, and when you get beyond the tropics.
There's a lot of water everywhere.
Yeah. When you get too much rain, even the tile don't help.
We got so much rain this year that was in large amounts too.
Yeah. Yeah, we got, well, when that tank here floated, that was a lot of rain. But besides that, the ground was full of water anyway.
The fall is coming, it'll be better.
I hope it don't rain for a long time. Not until it snows.
You'd rather have snow?
Well, snow is good for the land too. I mean, keeps the frost from going down so deep. But I don't like to see a lot of snow because it's something you have to move in the yard and in the driveway. And
So you talked about the hog house. Do you remember how old were you when you built that, or what year that would have been?
well, it was 58, I think, we built the hog house.
That was one of the first things we did, wasn't it?
Well, we built the pump house first. And then,
Remember, I made a list of what we did each year, and it was just one thing after the other we built on this place.
well, there wasn't
There
any,
wasn't much here.
there wasn't any buildings here. I mean, that barn was it just, it was so cold in the wintertime. I put drinking cups in there, and then they'd freeze up in the wintertime. It was just a shell, you know, because it wasn't insulated or.
It was high and narrow. Do you remember that? You don't remember the old
No.
No, you wouldn't remember that. Yeah. So that's why I figured we'd build a hog house so we could start raising pigs. And pigs were a pretty good price, you know, comparatively with the rest of farming. And we got started with, I think we had 11 cows in that little barn. But the gutters were only about that deep. And I just wheeled it out the back. It wasn't made for farming.
When we first moved over here, he had just one cow,
Yeah, we had one.
and he'd he'd sit on the milk too, anyplace in the pasture.
Yeah, she was real tame. I could go and milk her right out in the pasture.
We have a picture of it.
But that couldn't have lasted more than 1 year, because I think we got some more cows right then.
It was just when we first started over here. So imagine in the fall, we'd have more cattle, put in the barn.
I bought some from Clyde Johnson. Lauren bought some from him too, because he sold out.
It's changed a lot since those days.
It was starting out scratch. A
So-
lot of work.
When you added pigs, how many did you start with when you?
Well, we had enough to fill a hog house with sows, you know.
We had pigs down in the old sheds down there before you got the hog house.
Yeah, that's right. Where did we raise them though?
We had a shed down there.
Because we had quite a few butcher hogs down there.
There were two
That's
sheds,
when,
we had wood in one and
That was when Myron got hit with the. I was trying to move the pigs, and I had a fork in my hand. And here he was right behind me, and when I come around with the fork, I hit him in the head.
well, he was always with his dad all the time. He didn't, I think after as soon as he could walk, he was just out there all the time.
We put up hay over on your folks' place there, and he went along over there in the wintertime to get the hay. I put him up in the load. But it was a lot of work then.
You did everything the hard way.
Hmm?
You did everything the hard way.
Yeah, I had to pitch the hay out of that barn over there. It was all loose hay. We put it up there loose, and then we took it out of there loose, hauled it home.
After the hog house, what did we build?
What?
What came next after the hog house?
I think it was, the barn was in '64.
Well, we put hot the water in the house in '63.
Yeah. But I put the water in the barn at the same time as we put the water in the house, in that old barn. Sometimes you do work that has to be, it's just actually it's just a waste of time. Because you have to do it over again.
Like what?
Well, we had to put, after we built the new barn, then we had to put water in there and drinking cups and start out with, we didn't have the barn cleaner in right away either. So I had to get back in there with the winter spreader and, no, that's right, we had doors on this end too, we could drive right through. We didn't have this milk house on there. So I'd drive through and throw the manure in the manure spreader.
That was kind of fun to have a big deal on the side. But then you had to put the milk house on.
Yeah. That was because we were putting in the bulk tank.
That old barn, we were wishing that would blow down because it wasn't very sturdy and stuff.
Yeah, the old barn.
And it wouldn't.
And I took all the braces out inside and, boy, I used a tractor with the loader to push it over. So it
We're
didn't,
so stubborn, we were just hoping every big wind, we were hoping it would go. It just stood there firm.
then we had to dig out the foundation for it, you know, and it was cement. Dad was here and helped with that too. We used some dynamite to bust up the cement in there. Yeah.
Dynamite easy to find.
Yeah, you could buy it any place then. They used to have it down at, in Little Socket, the lumberyard down there. So, I even bought some dynamite for 4th of July.
Confession time.
I put it in an old milk can down in the pasture. And blew it up. I had to make some noise. But the road was the roughest part, almost, because we didn't have a decent driveway. It used to come in on this side. And it's,
It was just a path.
yeah, they didn't use it for only in the summertime when it dried up, because it was smooth all the way along. Well, they'd piled rocks in those low spots and clear up till just lately I've been digging out rocks out of there. It's in the field, you know.
It's really primitive when I bought here. We moved in March, we didn't get electricity till August
You moved in what year?
1950. And then we got the electricity in August, I think it was, and then we could see.
What was the process of getting electricity at that point?
Well, it was, they hadn't, well, yeah, the High Line run past here, but all you had to do was get them to bring the line up to, up there. That was no problem.
But see, there had been renters here all the time, so, you know, nobody ever put the lights in. We'd had, at our house, we had electricity in the 30s sometime.
Yeah, 36, I think, or 37. We got it at home. But
They didn't put it in.
this place was only rented till we bought it. And nobody, well, Eldon's dad owned it. And he rented it out to different people. They lived here one time too, because Eldon, he tells about when they lived here.
Yeah, that's when he was really little.
But
That was kind of, you know, we're used to electricity over in folks' place. I don't know if they were here and there was some electricity.
we had an old wood stove. We had a wood stove in the kitchen. It was a regular,
Range.
what? I mean, it was a cook stove. Then we had an oil burner in the dining room.
It was cozy.
Of course, we didn't have so many rooms to heat then.
See, Myron was a year and, I'm trying to think, year and a half or so when my mom got here. No, he couldn't have been that old. Because when Becky was born, he was a year and 3 months, so he wasn't quite a year. He had his first birthday out here, remember that?
But there was no road the first year, was it? Dad and I worked on the road and put it where it comes now.
Yeah, but that was later. That was a few years later, wasn't it?
No, it wasn't too much later.
Okay.
It could have been a couple of years.
Okay.
But we had to, I remember at Easter, we used the tractor and the manure spreader to get out to the road. It was a manure spreader I bought a new one,
Okay.
and I put bales in there.
Hmm. Yeah, that was, the kids were about 2 and 3. Becky probably was 2 and Myra in the middle of 3. I remember the outfits they wore. That's all I know.
And when we built or made the road along where it is now, it was a fence line along there too. On John Olson's side, there was a fence line, and so we couldn't go beyond that fence line. And the way I started the road was to plow, take a plow and plow it in, just keep plowing it in, and then we had a grader that we graded, kept grading it and leveling it off, and then I used a scraper. I'd go down the ditch and down and take a load of dirt and get up on the road and dump it and go on the other side and do the same and go back and forth, putting dirt up on the road. It was Benny Redning's scraper. They called it a tumble bug. It was a rope to pull it when you wanted to dump it. And then of course we had that township grader that we graded it with to kind of, but it was a poor job. Couldn't do too much. We didn't have a good road here until we had Mike Starry. He was building the road past here. We were building it up. There was a road, but it didn't have much for ditches or anything. He was building the road, and we had him build the road up here. He got down, so he got some clay, because otherwise it was just topsoil that the road is made out of. But then we got that clay on there, and then I had it, or he was working for his brother Roland Starry, and then they had hauled in 10 loads of gravel on top of that. Of course, we've had more gravel put on after that too, a lot of times. But before we got that gravel on there, we had an awful time. It was hard to even, when it rained, it was hard to stay on the road. It was so greasy.
Sorry.
Bless you.
You know, we had to get the tractor out sometimes to
Many times.
get the truck out. Remember hauling pigs to Lone Prairie. I think of all the work, and I know I wish many times we hadn't bought this place. That we had bought a bigger place, and even if we'd had to go in debt, you know, it would have been better.
Yeah, but now we've got a lot of memories on the place. Good memories.
And at that time, I wasn't always feeling good either. I had stomach trouble. I had those ulcers for so many years. There's sometimes that I didn't do too bad with. I mean, he had a lot of little aids and thumbs.
Do you remember that, Grandma?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember that?
Yes, very well.
They bothered me mostly in the spring and in the fall.
When we built down the living room and the patio, last time 72, whenever it was.
72.
Then he was, the day that they were gonna start working here, he was laid up. So-
Ulcers were bleeding. I had to lay in bed.
So,
'Cause Clay came into the bedroom and
yeah,
talked to me about it.
it was we just about didn't do the job because of that, but
But
then,
he kind of talked us into it though. And we had a big maple tree out here that
right next to the house.
Dad and Myron took care of because it was in the way.
We've lost a lot of trees. A lot of
We
beautiful
gained a few
trees.
too though. But I've had trouble with my stomach after that too though. The time that Justin had his last home game in Alec,
We all
basketball
remember,
game.
we all remember, plus a lot of people in Alec. Remember that?
Yeah. Yeah, I told Justin, he saw him before the game in the hall there. I said, if this weren't your last game, I wouldn't be here tonight. And they ended up in the hospital that night. I think I passed out the night when I got down on the floor.
Well, in the first place, he couldn't hardly, we sat up maybe about 4 or 5 rows. He got up and he was just weak. And I had to hang on to him to bring him down. And when we got to the bottom, he just fell. Fell on the bottom. Then he started throwing up.
Throwing up blood.
And then people went and got the garbage can, and it was a
I
mess.
think it was a waste paper basket.
You were just white as a sheet.
And they called the ambulance. But then there were people praying too.
Yeah, it was quite exciting because there were clusters, little clusters of people around the gym praying for him. And we meet those people yet and they talk about it. He never does anything quietly. It's gotta be excitement.
It's a good thing we didn't get out in the car and
We would never have made it to the car. You were at one point, couldn't do it.
that's when I didn't get anything to eat for 2 or 3 days. They wouldn't give me anything in the hospital. I couldn't even get water. They brought a little sponge thing on a looked like a sucker.
Yeah, but you feel better.
And I
You got medication.
wiped my lips because my lips got so dry. They wouldn't give me any water. And I don't know what day it was. I think it was 3 days later. Then they run this scope down my throat. That's when the doctor said I did some welding down there. But then I got some good pills to take too. It's the acid buildup that eats the lining of the stomach. And, these pills keep the acid down. Well, I don't have too much trouble.
You've had that for a while, right? I mean,
What?
you had ulcers pretty early on, didn't you?
Oh, I had ulcers when I was 20 years old. Well, just before I got to be 21. That's when
I've never known him without him.
I started getting so weak, couldn't figure out, I just got so weak. And found out I was hemorrhaging. Then I had to go to bed. I could get a little bit cream and
It was whole milk, wasn't it? Did you get cream?
I just got cream for some of it.
Mm.
Then it gave me some kind of a powder. And it finally healed up enough so that it never heals up completely. You still got that. Stop bleeding anyway.
Had you ever had anything like that? That serious of an episode previous to this? Have you ever?
No. I had a lot of stomach aches, you know, but I didn't. Because when we were kids, when we were growing up, there got to be an awful lot of stress. Because we had to work so much. Because my mother was sick in 1936, of course. She was gone practically all summer. And Lauren and I had to do a lot of the work. We did get Ellsworth, our cousin, he came over and helped with George and stuff. And with the field work too. But Dad was gone down to cities for, I don't know how many trips he made down there. Because he gave blood. I forget how many pints of blood that he gave, but he gave a lot of blood. Because she needed blood. Because it was her spleen that was deceased, they said. You know, she was hemorrhaging. Blood came out all over her arms and her body. And Dad was giving blood to keep her. And then they gave her snake venom to stop the bleeding, I suppose. I don't know. Then they had to build her up so she could have surgery. I don't know just when she had the surgery, but she was down there from April till August. And we had our Aunt Ida stayed with us and did the cooking and housework.
You were what, 12?
Hmm?
You were 12?
I was 12 in April, but then of course I turned 13 in September. I had the same birthday then as I am now.
I hope so.
Was she home by the time you had? You said she came back in August, so was she
Yeah.
home?
Yeah.
For birth.
Yeah, she had the surgery in, I don't know, I suppose it was in July she probably had the surgery. And she did pretty good for how many years, or several years.
What were birthdays like for you when you were younger?
Can't remember that we did anything real special. I think Mother made us a cake. And I just can't remember. I thought of it many times, can't remember just what we did on birthdays. I know they recognized, you know, us on our birthdays and stuff like that, but
You know, we didn't get much for gifts.
we didn't.
People just don't realize how poor people were then. But anyway, we were very poor. There was no money to get.
I remember going to town with Dad once, and he gave me a dime. That was a lot. I thought I was rich. And it was about the time of, he gave me a Herberger chip. When they brought eggs in, then they'd get these chips, they called it, and then you'd have to shop in Herbergers. But I didn't understand that, so I took it and went to a dime store, and I found something I wanted to give Lowell, so I was gonna buy that, and she said, "Oh, we don't take that kind of money here." So I never got to buy him a birthday gift. I remember that because it was traumatic. I was going to get something for my little brother and couldn't. But they just did that so they could keep the business in, the money in their store. So I probably could have bought something for him before my Herberverse, but I didn't know that. But 4th of July, we got something to spend. So we get some pop and ice cream. It wasn't very much. I suppose pop was about 5 cents.
5 cents for a bottle of pop.
Yeah.
Ice cream cone was the nickel too.
We probably got a dime. That was it. I don't remember, but Dad always gave us a little bit so we could buy something. But everybody, I mean, we didn't know we were poor. Everybody was in the same boat. Nobody was rich.
See, it wasn't only that there wasn't much money, but we didn't get any crops either.
That's true.
Because of 1933 to 1936, I think it was 3 years that we didn't thrash a bushel of grain. And you know, if you don't have a crop, you gotta have something to feed the livestock. The grasshoppers were so bad. You know, the government gave out poison brand spread out for the grasshoppers. And we had it in the granary, and the sow got out and went in there and ate that poison brand, and she died.
What helped my folks a lot was that Dad got the job for the insurance company. He was secretary for the Gordon Scandinavian Mutual Fire Insurance Company. Had a long name. But he got that in 25, I think it was, 1925. So then he had a little income from that, then besides the farming. But that's what helped them a lot.
We had a hard time keeping the cows in the pasture. Everything was burned up in the pasture, and they tried to get out. And the fields wasn't much to get into anyway. You know, I had to herd the cows a lot of times. So back then, that's what was part of the reason I got the ulcers, I think. Just too much stress.
Being the oldest son.
Yeah, Lauren was 10 and I was 12 when they took Mother down to the hospital down in Carl Rowan told they called down there. And he said, Carl Rowan said, bring her down. So that night they took, Benny took her down, and my dad went along. I think there was somebody else that went along too. But they went down and took her down to Carl Rowan. And he was a Christian man. I think there was a lot of prayer that went into his doctor work.
He must have been well known because Mother had he took out she had appendix surgery. He did that. Oh, she was about 15, I think. So he must have been well known.
Yeah.
Did you both grow up with a pretty regimented like devotional life with your parents? Did they have a consistent like rhythm that they did that?
We did. Dad always, every morning Dad would read out of the scripture, and we were all around the table every morning when that was done. The only thing is he read Norwegian. Of course, we spoke Norwegian then, but the reading of the Bible was different than what we spoke. But we could understand enough so that we knew what he was reading. But yeah, we always did. And in the evenings, they prayed with us before we went to sleep too. So I grew up with that.
We had devotions, but Dad wasn't a Christian until, I think it was 34, or was it? When he became a Christian. So before that, we hadn't had any devotions. But it was when Walsted was preacher, and Dad became a Christian. They went out to the field and talked to him. He accepted Christ. So then we did have, we'd read out of the Bible and we'd pray in the morning. Anyway, till we got older.
Yeah.
Can you tell me about? I didn't realize your dad didn't get saved until 34. Do you know how that happened?
I don't know if it's sort of 34. It was right in that area. Yeah.
But all you kids have been born before
Yeah.
this happened.
Yeah, I was 11 years old, I suppose. I think it was 34, but I can't say for sure. That was 34 was the year my Grandpa Johnson died. And he was a Christian man. And Dad worked with him a lot. I don't know. He probably had a lot of influence on him.
I never knew that either. I didn't know that until, well, I've known it now a few years, but I remember I was surprised when I heard it because Grandpa is such a Christian man. I thought he'd always been a Christian man.
He had a hard life to begin with because his dad took his own life. He was alcoholic, and of course, in those days there was no helps for anybody to stop drinking. And so Dad had to do a lot of the work there at home.
How old was he when your grandpa died?
Dad was only 16.
That's a tough age to face that.
Oliver was quite a bit younger than Dad.
Your dad grew up farming?
Yeah. That's all he ever did was farm. I mean, of course, he did a lot of carpenter work outside.
Well, in the years after, our food marriage, he did painting too. Painting
Oh,
and
yeah, he used to-
carpentering and
he used-
wallpapering.
He used to be kind of a handyman for people to call on. He used to fix roofs. I know he shingled roof for over on Marvin Johnson's place. I didn't go up. I was up there only once on the roof, but Warren helped him some on that roof.
Well, every time we did any kind of building over here, he was here helping.
Yeah,
He was always here checking things out, sure it's done right.
that bedroom there, he did most of the work in there. I mean, I did all of the,
Bedroom and the bathroom. Bedroom and the bathroom.
yeah. He put that floor in there,
Mm-hmm.
he did all of that.
The small boards, he helped with the entry.
Yep.
And he put the other on. He was here all the time, checking it all out too.
He helped at the granary,
Milk cows.
milk cows and hog house too. Helped at that. So,
What was he like to work with?
oh, he was
Pretty crazy.
He was good. He was patient, and I remember when we first moved in here, he painted in here. He could paint. He was a good painter. He painted a lot of for other people. Sometimes I think he didn't charge enough for people. You know,
He
the
was
work
too good. He was too good.
He did a lot of volunteer work.
The people loved him.
But then, back then, neighbors helped neighbors more. You know, when it comes to thrashing, we always have a thrashing crew, you know, from one place to another. Some people had more to thrash than others, but they never figured the difference or anything. They just helped till they got done. And we had a good neighbor, Alfred Bjerstrom. When we was cutting grain with the binder, and we had a binder with the used horses to pull it. And Alfred came over and said to Dad, "Cut off the pole off your binder," he said, "and we'll make a hitch and hook the tractor on it." He had a tractor, and so he pulled the binder. Because it was hot that year, I know. And hard
So
for
did
the
he have the
horses.
first tractor in the area?
What?
Did he have the first tractor?
Not maybe the first one. I think Judge Curtisville had the first one. And I think,
That's before you had tractor power?
you know, we didn't get any tractor power till in 44. We got a new John Deere in 44. But it's just
Imagine the excitement.
during the wartime. And you had to put in the name. You just couldn't go to a store, to an implement dealer and buy a tractor. You had to have a permit from the government. Dad got a permit, and he went to Secus and bought one from Ralph Moss. They had the John Deere dealership there. And that was our first tractor. But that was the year that was the year that I got sick in the fall.
Which year? Which time?
That's when I had bleeding ulcers the first time.
For the first time.
And if I hadn't had the bleeding ulcers, I would have had to go into the service. So then I went down to the cities and worked.
And then he met me.
Win-win. I want to go back to your dad's conversion. This is complete news to me. This is complete. Did he ever talk about, like, well, first of all, growing up, you know, being 34 years old, having established this life as a non-Christian, you said your mom's parents were Christians?
Oh yeah.
His mom was too.
you know, actually she did something she shouldn't have done.
Yeah. That's one of the first questions I asked him, and I said, her parents let her marry him? Or, you know,
Maybe that's the reason there was so much sickness and stuff, you know, that God used to.
wake him up. He was Christian though before she had that first surgery.
Yeah. Yeah. But then they bought that place down there. You know where they live still.
Mhm.
There was a lot of work to be done down there. The well, we had trouble with the well right away. And I remember Grandpa Johnson coming over there. Well, you know, he died not too many years after that, but he had a mustache. And I remember the icicles hanging down from his mustache. And he helped Dad with the well. And the barn was a shack. Dad did a lot of work on that too. Putting gutters in and stanchions in, and cement floor. And we built on a lean to the south. That was a chicken house. And I did most of that work on that. Dad told me what to do, but I did most of that work on that. So we had quite a few chickens then.
That was a big thing for the folks. Dad had chickens over there. I remember in his writings, he tells about how he bought some baby chickens, little chickens, and people around here thought he was crazy. And then he had that chicken house at Hannah. And so he had a lot of chickens, and he sold a lot of eggs, and he said they started calling him the Chicken King. Because then others tried it too then. But that was one way that they got income for groceries and stuff they bought. Brought the eggs in, and then they bought groceries with the egg money. So I don't know what year that happened, but
I can still remember waking up in the morning, and I don't know who was cleaning the eggs, but they were putting them in these egg cases, you know. They had those,
yeah, those little papers that you put in, and you put the eggs in.
yeah, and then another layer
Yeah.
on top.
Mhm.
I can remember,
We used to
because
do that.
they had to clean the eggs.
We do too.
And we had some turkeys. And Dad, that's another thing Dad did. Well, it was Ebert Witzos, they had turkeys too, and so he'd go and dress the turkeys. Not take the insides off, just take all the feathers off. Even left the head in. Just cleaned them. I don't know where they went, but it was just, I remember helping with the turkeys too, to hang them up, you know, but by the feet and take the, you had to watch you didn't rip the skin on them.
Yeah. A certain trick to it. You just pull them down. Did your folks have a garden?
Yeah,
Yeah, we did too. Big garden. Lots of canning.
I remember driving horses a lot. Did a lot of plowing and dragging and digger with the digging it. We used to walk back and forth across the field behind the digger and the drag. So it's funny that my legs have held out. We used to really do a lot of walking. We walked to school and we used to do a lot of walking. In the summertime, when we done with the chores, and we'd walk down to Maple Lake and go swimming.
There weren't cars to get into and drive around then.
How far was that?
Down to the lake, it was, if you walked the road, it was about a mile and, I suppose about a mile and a half. But we used to cut across.
Of course.
We cut across when we went down there, but then when we came back, there was a whole bunch of kids that everybody, I mean, all the kids around there were down in the lake, and we'd all come back and talk, and it was,
Get in trouble.
huh?
Get in trouble.
No, we didn't get in trouble.
I remember walking to like confirmation class. I walked I suppose Saturdays we went. I walked, it would be about 3 miles, I suppose. Back and forth. Sometimes somebody would come along and pick me up, but otherwise I walked. We did a lot of walking then.
Well, I didn't walk for confirmation, but I walked when we had Bible school down in Bethel. We'd walk down there.
Yeah, we had to walk for Bible
Sometimes,
school too.
sometimes Marius Olson would come along and we'd get a ride with him.
Well, see, the neighbors, everybody knew, we knew each other, and they knew Saturdays I went to confirmation, so there were neighbors that would pick me up on the way back or take me, But we didn't have any fear. We didn't worry about it, we just walked. Walked to school. We used to cut right across here, because our farm was down there, and so it was just straight across. And then the farmers didn't mind if we walked, over the fields and through the fences, and that's changed some too, where farmers don't like kids going through their fences. We did, we just had our own path coming across.
Well, for confirmation, I used to drive. Marius Ole Olson and I were in this confirmation class, and when it was Ole's turn, and Marius took us out there. I had to walk over to Marius's, then I got a ride to confirmation. But when it was our turn, I drove our old Whippet.
He was very old, 12 or 13.
Yeah, I was 12, I suppose. In the wintertime, came up to the Elam church there, and there's a big snowbank there before you get to the church. Well, he said, I bet you can't get through that.
Challenge.
I went through it and I hit the church. Broke the bumper.
Well, didn't you drive into the house too?
At home, yeah, because
Yeah,
the brakes didn't work on that thing. Came up to the house and hit the pantry, where the pantry is there. But it was mechanical brakes on the thing. It just didn't work a lot of the time.
What were the repercussions?
I think
Oh, it must be Orville again.
I don't remember any punishment that I got. I used to do a lot of driving. I used to haul the cream down to the creamery in Little Sauk. And there we had where Orville Martin lives. I mean, his place. John Langley's lived there. And there was no driveway. We drove through the pasture, and there was nothing built up. And there you had to watch so you didn't hit rocks, because there was a lot of rocks out in that pasture out there. there was a gate down there. You had to be sure and close the gate when you left because they had cattle out there. Then it was across the road over to Emma Wool's, well, Clarence Lawn and Emma Wold, and they had an awful driveway there. I don't remember Ebert Witzel's driveway. It wasn't built up much, but it wasn't that bad. But Emma Wold's and Clarence Langley, or John Langley's.
Was it pretty common to drive that young?
I think so. I think kids got to drive pretty young.
I can't remember my brothers driving that young.
No,
I had
probably
a
not.
stricter dad. I remember when they started dating and had to ask for the car. I can remember that.
No, we took the back seat out of the car because it was cream. It wasn't milk. It was cream. We had to separate it at home and haul the cream down. And so each place had only one can of cream.
It must have been hard in the car too.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
So were there any other young guys your age that were driving at 12 and 13?
I don't think so, but I don't know.
Lived in a world of his own over there.
No, I don't know. At that time, Beershams weren't living there then, because they didn't move up till a little bit later.
How about Johnson's? They had a bunch of boys.
Yeah, but they didn't. They drove too when they got. Yeah, they did. Byron drove to school even when he was in probably the 7th grade or something.
Wow.
Because they had an old Buick. Their aunt Bertha, bought them it wasn't a new Buick, but it was a newer Buick. So they had the old Buick. The kids used to drive it.
What was the law back then? I mean, if you're driving at 12, was that a big deal?
I don't think I even had a driver's license.
No, you didn't.
I didn't have a driver's license. We never carried insurance either.
When did you get your driver's license?
Oh, it was before we got married.
Yeah. You hope so.
But it only cost 35 cents for a driver's license then.
Well, you must have had a loan before then.
Yeah, I did.
Goodness.
I suppose when I got 16 or so. The laws were different then.
I didn't get my license until after we were married. I got my driver's license at the same time as Myron did. I taught the year after we were married in 49. I taught in 101, that country school over here. And I drove there and home again. And I went over to your folks. I drove different places. And when Myron was old enough to get licensed, then we went in and took our license together. He beat me, of course, but I got my license. That was quite a day.
So your dad sold insurance, started selling insurance at 25, you said?
1925.
What was that like during you were talking about 33 to 36, that those years were pretty bad. I mean, what was insurance like back then? Did they not?
The premium wasn't very much.
It couldn't have been.
It was pretty cheap insurance. And that was only fire
Yeah.
and storm. Well, Gordon was only fire.
Yeah, I think it was only fire.
Yeah.
But there, They must have been buying it because he got a salary doing it.
Yeah.
He was secretary of the company, so he had to keep books. And he had that job. Well, he had that job till he died. Probably. He just retired just before. Because I can help. I remember when I was old enough to write, and I suppose in junior high, I helped with bookwork, helped him fill in things. But he was quite busy with that. Then there were losses, and then he'd have to go and check on that. There's always. Well, your dad was an agent too for that company, but that
Yeah.
was later.
See, my Grandpa
know.
Johnson was
Yeah, he was there
he
too.
was an agent, and then
That
Dad
company.
took over from his business.
I can remember his Grandpa Johnson coming. He was the neatest guy. Always had candy for us kids. He was-
Grandpa Johnson was a very progressive. He did farming, and man, he did a lot of things. He had a steam engine, did thrashing. He had a press where he made sorghum. I never did see it, but I mean that was before my time. He used to race sugar cane, and make sorghum. He had apple orchards. He built that new barn, and he had a milk machine. I can still remember the milk machine. It was a one that the can set between two cows, and it had could milk two at one time.
Oh,
And he had a gas engine that was running the pump in the
well, he didn't have to milk by hand then. Huh?
what?
He never milked by hand.
Not that I saw. I mean, it, yeah, he had a lot of cows and a lot of hogs. He's a good farmer. I think he was kind of maybe pretty stern with his boys, because they didn't stick around. I think that
Probably was kind of a perfectionist or something. Just
I think Bill, the youngest boy, Bill, he was around there because I remember him being in the barn, and he was throwing down silage.
So did your mom ever talk about her relationship with her dad? What was
No, she didn't have any trouble with. I mean, they got along good. Because Mom was no more. I mean, she got along good with her parents. A little different with Anne, her
well, she was a
sister.
little,
She was the youngest.
she was a rebellious kind of,
Yeah,
but the others weren't. The other girls were nice.
yeah. Ella, Amanda, Bertha. She was the oldest girl. I didn't see much of her. She went out to California, and that she came back a few times, but otherwise we didn't really get to know her very well. Ella is was the mother to Bob Overgaard. And Wilfred and Irvin. Did I say Wilfred? Wilfred. Conrad. There were quite a few in that family.
9, I think.
What?
I think it's about 9 of them.
Ruth and Dolores and Esther
Joanne.
and Joanne. It was a big family. Because Nora, Ella, and Gus, they were good parents. They brought their kids up right. Wilfred he was in the mission field over in where Mark Reed is over there, Thailand. Yeah, he worked over there as a missionary. And Bob, he was a minister. He was president of the Senate for a while.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know much about Irvin. Well, Wilfred and Bob, they're the only two left of the
The boys.
boys.
Joanne and Esther.
What?
Joanne and Esther and Ruth are left.
We saw Bob at restaurant. Is that
Yeah.
Culver's?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We have to be.
I figured I thought it was them when I sat down, but I didn't know for sure. And she looked at me and I looked at her, and we've always known each other, and neither one of us said anything because we didn't expect to see them.
And they got up to go then.
Well, and I whispered to Orville, I said, I think that's Bob Overgaard. And then they must have done the same whispering because I knew it too.
But then I saw the back of his head and
Yeah.
he,
See, he was looking down, so when I didn't see his face when we went in.
Hmm.
But a couple of weeks ago, we saw Omar Journas. Last Sunday, we saw Omar Journas at
Kentucky Fried.
good conversation.
We didn't even talk to him. I mean,
No.
we saw him when he was walking out.
Yeah.
Omar.
Did you know him?
Yeah. He taught a couple Bible classes. He was a big end times guy.
Yeah.
You said, I keep going back to this, but because I find this so interesting, because I think it shapes for me some really interesting things about
Our family?
well, our family, and also just like your where your dad has come from, where you've come from, and then your spiritual experience. And you said your dad was about 34 and you were about 11, and then you said that when you were about 12, that's when your mom was taken down to. I mean, that's a pretty drastic, up to the age of 33, 34, your dad is not a Christian, living with his wife who is, and then he becomes a Christian, and a year later is pretty much flung into this very, tumultuous, like test, or I don't know, but
How about did he, made me think of something too. How about, did he go along to church and stuff before that?
Yeah, he did.
Yeah.
He did, but we were going to Long Bridge. That was ALC, is it?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
church. That's where we went. That's where I started Sunday school. I remember Emma Wald was my Sunday school teacher. I remember that room back up in there where we used to meet. Anyway, then when Dad became a Christian, then we left the Long Grace Church and went to the place where Grandpa Johnson was going to church down Bethel, New Bethel Church. And
See, your Grandpa Johnson was one of the beginners of that church, wasn't it?
what?
He was one of the
Yeah,
beginners
Yeah,
of that little Bethel church.
I think he put quite a bit into building that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's
But
of
see,
course. Then we started going there in Sunday school, and we used to call it parochial school. It was Bible school.
See, his dad wasn't rebelling against anything, so, you know, the Spirit must have been working on his life there.
Yeah.
Do you remember what it was for your dad? I mean, what brings him from point A to point B? What's that conversation like? That do you
I
ever
don't
talk
know
about
too much about that.
Could you tell the difference?
Oh yeah, we could tell the difference. Yeah.
difference? How?
In his attitude and depending on the Lord, you know. I remember being out in the woods. We were cutting wood, and he'd say, "Lord, help us." That was the difference. It got to be, you know. Yeah, it was a lot. Got to be elder in Elam once.
He was elder in Berea too? Or he was,
No.
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 but he was what you call it, I can't think of the word. Meaning you've been an elder before and you are once an elder, always an elder, but it's just that, it's a word that.
I remember him telling about when my mother was in the hospital down at Deaconess Hospital down in the cities, and he was walking. I don't know where he stayed at the time, but he was walking to the hospital, and he had a vision, and he saw Jesus was holding her hand. Yeah. He said, then I knew she was going to get well.
Yeah. My heritage is a little more different than his, because both my grandparents, they were both sets of grandparents were Christians. And on Dad's side, most of them professed to be Christians when they were younger. So we always had that basic. My dad, when they first got married, was a pastor. He was a pastor in Enderlin, North Dakota, for a couple of years, and then he graduated from. He got his seminary up at Fergus, or it was Wapaton, wherever the school was. But then he had so much Norwegian in him that he didn't think he could say the words right. He felt like he was incompetent. And that's when he bought the farm, and he said that was the worst decision he had ever made, was to quit and start farming when it was, and that got so dry, bad. So that if their first years on the farm were really bad for them. But Dad was active in teaching and stuff in his church. And
Yeah, he used to teach Bible
class.
school.
Mhm.
Bible class in Dealin.
He was an elder for many, many years. He even directed the choir when he was younger. He was choir director. Yeah. But so both Mom and Dad were Christian when they got married, and maintained that all their life. And on the Clucken side, most of them were. There probably were a couple that, later, but. And on Mom's side, Grandpa and Grandma were Christian, but some of their kids didn't profess that. But so I have quite a strong heritage when it comes to. I think maybe we were a little legalistic when we were growing up, but it seemed like it kind of goes with that, I guess.
But when we had Bible school down Bethel, we studied the catechism, beside and the Bible history book. We studied that. So when we started for confirmation, that wasn't that hard. We knew all the Bible stories, and we had he was a sister to Dan Erickson.
Ruth.
Ruth Erickson was our parochial school teacher for some time, and then Bella was our our parochial school teacher, and Sunday school. Mrs. Berg, I think, was part of the time. I really don't remember now.
Yeah, we had to learn a lot more when we were in Sunday school and confirmation.
Well, see, our parochial school or our Bible school, we had it 4 weeks, and we had it all day,
Yeah.
from morning till 4 o'clock.
And no crafts.
No, it wasn't crafts either. It was
No, there's so much crafts.
memorizing scripture, and then the confirmation.
And even we had the North kids would come one day, and the South kids, and we actually would have it like 2 months because it was every other day, and it was just think of the walking we did then, and so the South kids would come one day, the next day the North kids. Then we all got together and practiced for the program. We had a lot of kids. There must have been over 40 of us. It was just packed of kids. But long, hot days. No, 1 week seems so long. And we had all those days.
Only 4 hours a day, right?
Well, with the day camp, it's no longer. No.
Oh yeah, they go till 3,
Oh, do
just a little more than 4 hours. I can't ever remember complaining about going either. It must have been fun to go.
We did a lot of singing too. Old hymns.
We did too. And confirmation day, we didn't know which questions we were gonna get either. And we just had to know the whole book. And we, at my confirmation day, we had to each tell a story.
Bible story.
Hmm?
Bible story.
Would you tell?
Hmm?
What did you tell? Do you remember?
Didn't ask me. I've got it written down though.
Did you?
Mm-hmm. I've got it written down someplace.
Well, I remember I had one story, and Ole Olson, he stuttered so much that he couldn't get anything out. So then Hagen said, Orville, will you tell it? Will you tell his story too? So I told his.
There's always, it seemed like almost every class had someone that would just sort of panic or whatever. So we'd have to fill in.
Yeah, Ole used to stutter a lot.
Yeah.
Even during confirmation, when we were going out there,
Class.
and Hagen would get so disgusted.
Yeah.
He got he couldn't get anything out. And Hagen was explaining how he could get over that, and it didn't help.
And then they get more nervous, it gets worse. My cousin and I sang 2 duets at our confirmation. And we sang Savior Like a Shepherd. But I don't remember what the other one was.
I remember at our parochial school program down Bethel, Lauren and I sang a duet. And we sang Into a tent where a gypsy boy lay, dying alone at the close of the day. I can't remember all of it.
It was different.
Twins.
When we had prayer before we ate, it was Norwegian.
Yeah, we did too.
Yes, and I'm be divorced. We didn't say the right words maybe, but spise getekket for words. I don't know
You
what
better not try it anymore, I think you got it wrong.
Gutta är så begam. So yes and amen. We knew it at that time, but
Did you know what you were saying?
no. I remember Joe telling us that when your dad had prayer and had devotions in the morning, he didn't understand what he was saying.
There were several things we didn't understand. But we knew it was good for us. I could understand his praying. The reading the Bible was harder. But I could understand the praying because he was praying, you know. But that's one thing we thought of, you know, as we got older, we thought he should have been reading English so we could have understood. But then, you know, we were talking Norwegian all the time at home. So.
That's one thing the folks never taught Norwegian at home unless there was something they were going to say that they didn't want us to hear. And they'd talk a little Norwegian. It wasn't enough to get us started. learning Norwegian.
Well, we all learned it right from the start.
Hmm.
Always did.
I remember
learned
one of the
English
first.
too, so we didn't.
I remember one of the first times we had Bible school, and we met. Jay Bierkus gave us a ride. We went down to the Warner Schoolhouse. That used to be a schoolhouse there, but it's right at that crossroad. And he gave us a ride. We rode with him down there, and there was some Norwegian down there. I mean, some of the kids had Norwegian. We didn't. The younger ones didn't, but there were some of them that did. Because I guess Jay Bjerkus could speak. I mean, he could
I suppose.
read Norwegian.
Do you remember? Do you remember your parents having your since your mom was a Christian and your dad wasn't? Do you remember do you remember them having conversations at all about that stuff?
Mm-mm.
Yeah.
I don't remember that.
Were you aware that
Well, you probably.
there was a spiritual difference?
I don't know if I was. I knew there was a difference when Dad became a Christian. I knew that very time when Walsted was out there. I remember that. I think it was Walsted and D.A. Erickson.
I know your dad mentioned D.A. Erickson.
Yeah. D.A. Erickson and Walsted.
You talk about one of your mom's sisters being somewhat rebellious, right? You said one of your
Yeah, Anne was kind of rebellious.
So was marrying your dad a rebellious thing for your mom?
Not really.
No.
I didn't notice any rebellion there.
No.
Mm-mm. No, his attitude and everything was
He was too kind.
good natured.
We used to have tent meetings a lot around here when we were growing up. Every summer there'd be tent meetings. They'd set up a tent in somebody's field or pasture, I suppose it was, and then have a special speaker in, and people from all over would come. And there were a lot of conversions when those were going on. So they were.
They'd have somebody sing.
They put a.
Remember they had one down in Ern Peterson's pasture one time? You played for,
I played for Leroy.
what we sang too.
Oh, that's right. I said I played for the quartet.
You know, they had a tent meeting down in Slaughter's pasture. And they had tent meetings over on
That was a big thing every summer. There'd be.
Holy Bjerkus's.
Uh-huh.
It was when Orville and Irene,
Yeah.
the-
But they would.
but there was Ole Bjerkus owned that place then. And they had a tent set up there. And
A lot of people came. It was very well attended. I don't know what they did about mosquitoes in those days. I can't remember that. But that was good. They must have had some kind of light in there. Was that after electricity or?
let's see. Well, they couldn't have electricity out on Slaughter's pasture because there wouldn't be no
Maybe
way
they
to
could run
connect.
a cord out there.
Huh?
Could run a cord out there.
Where from?
The house. Oh yeah. Oh,
It
before
was
electricity.
way
I
down
guess
in the
not.
pasture.
Guess not.
I don't know if they had some kind of lamps or lanterns or something. I remember back then they had these gas lights, could have had something like that. They never did have electricity down in Bethel, that little Bethel church, but they had gas lights. They had it was a big tank like this, and then it was two things that came out like this, and then there was those mantles or whatever they had on where they'd light them. And they give good light. The gas light was really good. You had to pump up the gas. That was they disappeared. Somebody took them.
Somebody stole them.
Yeah. And at Christmas time we had candles on the trees. Where they'd have water handy in case they should start fire. But they were careful when they put the candles on the trees so
They
they
had to stand straight.
wouldn't get one up against, so it would start on a branch or anything.
Had to put them to the edge of the tree,
Yeah.
to the edge of the branches. We did that at home all the time.
I remember doing that that they did that over to Grandpa Johnson's too.
Everybody did, I suppose.
Pretty risky though, with all those candles on those trees.
But see, then they'd do that, they'd just, certain times they'd do it, they wouldn't do it every time they were in church, they wouldn't have them lit, would they?
It was just Christmas Eve.
Yeah.
We couldn't go in that, at Grandpa Johnson's, we couldn't go in that living room. That was the living room, then the dining room, and then the kitchen. And we couldn't go in there until they lit the candles and
Surprise!
we could go in there. It was a nice house when I first remember it, because it was a fairly new house at that time. It was a very big house too, with that open stairway. And that big porch on the east side, big open, a screened-in porch. But Grandpa Johnson didn't live to be old. He was 69 years old. To me, that seems awful young right now. Because that's what Lauren was, only 69 when he died.
That's what I said I was yesterday.
All right.